All right. Have you ever wondered what it's like to catch bullpens for some of the best pitchers in baseball, or to coach catchers in one of the most respected organizations in the game? Today, I'm joined by Ezra Lacina, or as players know him, Coach Easy, who's the Los Angeles Dodgers bullpen catcher and minor league catching coach. Now, I want to highlight not just where he is, but where he's been, because I think this is a key part of what has shaped his journey and what's helped him grow in his position. And so, Coach has been, he's played at the NAIA level as a catcher, went on to coach at Everett Community College, and at Everett Community College sent a handful of catchers D1. And then it was this past year that he was called up to coach within the Dodgers organization. So one thing that Coach Easy excels at is movement efficiency and how he trains it, and just the drills and a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And so we're going to be deep diving this, whether you're behind the plate, on the mound, or in the box, and how you can train it like a pro. So if you're a baseball player trying to get an edge moving more efficiently and effectively so that you can play to your full potential, then you really want to listen to this one. So, Coach Easy, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. That was a very long intro than what I normally do, but I will say I'm really excited about this one. But yeah, so I wanna get right into it though. I know, like, with athletes listening, we've got kind of a range, but a lot of teen athletes, and so I really want to speak to what they need to hear, and really what you excel at your level. And so, again, one of your strengths is building drills, building the cues, the feels to really help build more efficient movement. But what does efficiency actually mean to you, and how you develop it in a player?
When it comes down to movement efficiency, essentially, I mean, it's a pretty simple answer in my mind. It's what is the fastest and most consistent way we can get from point A to point B. Now, especially when it comes to the catching position, we're operating in very small time frames because nowadays pitchers throw harder at every level. And even like, to relate to the youth levels, you know, nowadays when I would go out and recruit, Washington Arms, it seems like I would see a kid throwing 90 miles an hour almost every game versus, when I was playing high school ball in Washington, I saw 90 miles an hour maybe twice. Then at the pro level, obviously everyone's throwing very hard. I mean, I was in high A this year, and our average fastball velocity was like 94.6 for a high A team, and we had a kid topping out at 104. So, where that comes into effect is we have to make complex movements in split second, similar to hitting, where we have very little time to react and then make a productive move. So, I would say when it comes to the efficient movements, first thing, let's just check the receiving box because receiving is the most important thing catchers do these days. Even with this ABS challenge system, we saw it in AAA this year. The receiving still factored in huge because you can't challenge every single pitch. And if you have an inefficient glove movement, you're going to get beat by pitches. That's where you'll see a lot of catchers who, maybe there's one pitch, one location that they look great on, and then all of a sudden they get beat here, get beat there. A lot of times, from what I've seen in my time training guys, is that is due to inefficiency. A lot of times with the start of the move, what position we are in to start, what angles we are using, and then also what is going to be the most repetitive move for us to consistently get pocket. That's what not everyone's going to have the same glove load. Not everyone's going to have the same um, type of glove move. Three different glove moves that we kind of lock in on. Is like one is called a through move. It's more like what Cal Raleigh does, which is kind of just punching straight through the baseball. You look at what we call a vertical move, which is catch the ball, go straight up, essentially. More of what we do with the Dodgers organization is called a circle move, where it's go get the ball and then kind of let that momentum kick you back. All those moves work well based on the type of athlete and their efficiency, right? And the one thing that they all have in common is that the initial movement is out to the baseball and trying to stay on plane. And with glove inefficiency, a lot of it comes with initial glove lift, where ball is released, glove goes up, because that's your natural reaction. You see a baseball thrown at your face, you want to move your glove up. As catchers, we got to fight that urge and let that pitch move a little bit. Then we make the move, and that's how we have the most efficiency. Um, And, we want to make positive moves. Every move we make is towards the center of our strike zone. That's, that's probably like the biggest difference of this receiving technique versus, let's say like what I did when I was playing, which was, the old school 2-point, show the glove, kind of relax, wrist roll, is we were coming from a no man's land neutral position and then going with the pitch versus now when we anchor on the ground or very close to the ground, every movement we make can create an angle back towards the center of the strike zone, which is where you want to finish with the glove, and that creates more efficiency. In other aspects of catching, obviously blocking, blocking's kind of the, one where I've always had the philosophy, I don't care what it looks like, I just care that it works. Because it's the, it's the ugly part of catching where you just got to put your body on it and stop that baseball, keep it close, control the run game. And, but there's a lot of efficiency with that where, you'll see a lot of guys who hop up first. Their first movement's up or the first movement's in this direction versus being set in a good position to make your initial move right towards where that ball is going to be. Because once again, you have very little time to react to that. And, that also has to do with the start, just like with the glove. If our glove load's off or our initial glove positioning is off, we're going to have to make an inefficient move to make an efficient move. If we don't have our hips in the right spot, our pressure on our feet is in the right spot with the knee down, all that stuff, it's going to be hard to make that quick snap movement. And then obviously with throwing, that's where we're legitimately fighting a clock. The difference between an elite thrower and an average thrower is 0.05 seconds. The difference between a 1.95 pop time and a 2.0 pop time is huge. And, that's where how efficiently, what we kind of lock in is how efficiently can you get your right foot in the ground? How fast does your right foot get in the ground in a way that you still have your weight stacked in your hip so that you have power? But remember, regardless, you're not going to have your most powerful throw. It's not like, an outfielder that gets to rear back and launch. It's boom, boom. So your feet have to be as fast as possible and efficient. And then your hands have to have, your most efficient path, essentially. Because, we dip down, we go here, go in all these other directions. Every movement we make in a direction that goes against getting into that power position can cost you milliseconds. I think the biggest part is just the game moves so fast now that if you're inefficient, there's no way that you can survive. Which you'll see a lot of kids who they move well at a slow speed, and that works at certain levels. But every level that you go up, game's gonna get faster. You got to find a way to speed yourself up without losing composure. Like don't let the chaos overtake you. Learn to control the chaos.
Because I know you also have experience coaching the younger athletes as well. Like, when should they be training? Like, we'll speak specifically to catchers. When should they specifically be training more of that efficiency in the movement? Like, how crucial is it to learn that, say, at the middle school, high school levels, versus the pacing and the speed that you mentioned?
I think it really depends on how that athlete is developing because, obviously, some kids grow early, some kids grow late, no one develops at the same rate as far as just, physically as a human. When I was doing stuff for, a couple different facilities in the area where, I was just kind of like on salary and just doing group work with the athletes that, were part of that organization. I would get a lot of groups of younger guys that, we were trying to teach them something, but there was a lot of ages where I would be very honest with the parents of like, your kid's 9 years old. I don't think we really need to dive into all this. I think your kid just needs to get used to catching the baseball. So when I eventually went private and just started doing my own lessons, I generally cut it off at around like 12 or 13 as the age of, okay, we can really dive into this because you're starting to get to that age where you can control your movements. You understand body control a little bit better. Your body's starting to get into a build that's more similar to what it will probably develop into. Um, and now that being said, if a 9-year-old has great body control and, you know, moves like a ball player, sure, start then. But I would say, always try to teach moves that are going to lead into efficient athletic movement. However, don't overwhelm them if they're really early in their development. To get better at baseball, you just need to go outside and play baseball. There was one facility I used to work for where we would do these 30-minute free intro lessons. And, the point of those was, lessons cost a lot of money. sometimes parents aren't sure whether or not it's beneficial. Come do 30 minutes. For us as instructors, it was like attack one thing, then kind of give a report to the parents. And this is when I found out I was a pretty bad salesman in the facility world, because there was a lot of times where at the end of the lesson, the dad or mom would come talk to me. I was like, okay, so what do you think? Like an 8-pack, a 10-pack, like how many lessons should we get? Which instructors should we work with? And I would be point blank. I was like, your kid seems to really like the game. This is great. Right now, I think the best thing for a kid is you should go buy a bucket of baseballs, buy a net, and go find some grass and throw baseballs to your kid. Let them develop a little bit more into their body as an athlete before you start dropping hundreds of dollars or sometimes thousands of dollars on private instruction. Because there's a lot of stuff. I mean, like I never grew up with private instruction. Now, yeah, it was a different world when I was growing up, but the way I got good at baseball was simply my dad, when he got off work, would throw baseballs to me until his arm fell off. And then I was an infielder growing up. He would hit ground balls as hard as he could at me until I stopped all of them. Sure, could I probably benefited from some private instruction and played at a higher level? Most likely, but early on, probably not. So I would say it's tough to really lock in on that, but I usually think around 12, 13, sometimes 14, that's where you really start to figure out, like, okay, is this kid going to be a ball player? If you're going to be a ball player, then really start locking in on how you move. Because, everyone's got it. And also, you can start seeing what the motor preferences will be at that age in a lot of kids. So I think that's kind of the happy zone. But obviously, like anything, there are, exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, I like that, and I like how you say like not a or kind of a bad salesman, but it's like I don't think it's really about that. I think it's important to have coaches like you who are like, yeah, no, like what's best for you is not the private coaching right now. Like that's a huge thing, because I mean in our world right now, I think that's a lot of the reasons why parents have those doubts about hiring private coaches and whatnot. But one thing I do want to ask specifically then is, in ways to help the catchers, particularly I would say maybe the high school or the ones who are more focused on specializing. So what are some drills that or cues or anything that the athletes, the catchers could be utilizing to have quicker transfers, cleaner throws, better blocking, etc.?
So I'll start with the throwing piece, because that was one of the avenues I started going down probably like 2 years ago that initially looked a little weird, and I didn't really know if what we were doing made a whole lot of sense, but then it turned out to work great. Is I call it active throwing, where so much of what we do as catchers when we're training throwing is just the standard, like, okay, transfer, boom, boom, do the regular footwork out of your stance. And what I started having guys do is try to move more like infielders and be moving as transferring the ball. Kind of started with, I don't even know where I got the idea. I'm sure I think I saw a video of some infield guys doing a similar drill, and I was like, we can do this for catching, where I got a speed ladder and had my catchers run through the speed ladder doing, the typical ladder movements, or, run through one in each, two in each, sideways, do the dance, all, just making their feet move quick and efficiently. And then as they're exiting the ladder, I'm throwing a baseball. And as they exit the ladder, you got to keep your feet in rhythm as you catch, transfer, and throw. And something about that just unlocked more athletic movements behind the plate with the feet. Then that grew into working transfers with having your right foot go in different directions. So, most catchers will gain a little bit of ground, work through the pitch. There are some guys that are better at drop stepping. Like Will Smith is an example. He does a little baby drop step. Some guys kick out to the side. Some guys might even false step to their right. And for my guys at Everett at the time, I wasn't necessarily telling them like, oh yeah, let's like change your footwork. I was like, let's see if we can get your right foot going in different directions, but you still always get back to power. And then there's times where it's like, okay, shuffle back and forth. I'm going to randomly time when I throw the baseball, and whether you're going back, then boom, plant, go. If you're moving forward, work through the ball. So just challenging them in different ways to have their feet moving, but still be able to get the ball out in the same time frame that they would if they were in their knee down stance. So I think like some variations of that is just great, especially honestly probably for younger guys because you're just practicing being an athlete and throwing a baseball while being an athlete versus okay, let's train the athletic footwork and then let's throw the baseball. Let's do them at the same time because you don't get to move your feet and then think about it, then throw a baseball when a runner's going. I would say also just with hand work, just like with the hands, I like to slow it down a lot of like the speed of the work at first, and then we ramp up. So a lot of stuff off flips, just working on feeling glove turn, feeling what angle your hand is coming out of the glove, making sure we're not dipping down, making sure we're not like just reaching straight back. Feel the natural way that your arm is supposed to move. Um, and making sure you're not carrying the glove too far, making sure you're not going too far out with the glove, like finding that happy medium of transferring right in front of your chest. And then as you start to get that feel, then crank up a machine, throw different pitch shapes at you. Because obviously you're not always going to transfer fastballs, mix in some curveballs, mix in sinker, slider, whatever you want. And then we would then once we got the feel down, we would go rapid fire, which I've heard is not good for pitching machines. I have yet to break one doing this, but I would have 4 baseballs and I would drop 4, just boom, 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 and then I'd have to transfer, 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 and then I would have the Everett guys stick the last one just to kind of, you know, good bookend to the drill and also kind of like speed you up and then make your glove work clean at the end. But I think with throwing, you know, making sure that you're working on the athleticism and then the path of your hands is, in my opinion, the best way to go because then when you put that all together, it looks more like a natural throw. Blocking, a lot of it is just, we would do a lot of knee slides, especially nowadays with knee down, which technically blocking is simpler out of a knee down stance. There are people who will argue against that, but all the numbers say that it is. And just as someone who had to go from not catching for 6 years to catching again this year, going from old school to now knee down because I'm 29 years old and my knees can't handle catching on 2 feet anymore. Blocking's easier on one knee, but a lot of times just you got to feel how you're going to move side to side. So I mean, probably like the most key drill I'd have with guys, I would have them just do dry work. Just feel how your body has to work when you're going to push off your foot and slide with your knee, how your hip has to open up to get to a certain position. Then vice versa, pulling. Okay, I got to pull with my heel, feeling where the pressure points in your foot are to get that explosive move that has you just work along the ground and not hop up. So I think like blocking, that's probably the best way in my opinion, just to learn the moves and then just like everything, add more variables to it once you figure it out. You don't need to rush to like, okay, we did 5 minutes of this, you should be good. Here's, simulated 90 miles an hour, block it. Sometimes we got to take our time. Now there are some athletes that will click like that and yeah, go ahead, do what you want. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, for sure. I really like that you emphasize the athleticism of it because, yeah, like even the agility ladders, which, in some areas are kind of frowned upon, but in that area, it would make a lot of sense because, I mean, number one, you're the way that the mind works. And I know I see, like, I've had a huge appreciation for catchers watching Cal Raleigh this year is just like how many things that you have to have in your brain as a catcher. Like, you have to keep track of so much. And so when you're thinking about the agility ladder, making sure you're doing that right, and then you got like this ball coming at you and you got to like, release it. Like, I think just really, really unique stuff that I think just maybe a lot of players don't even really, really think about.
No, I mean it, and that's why when we first started doing it, I was so hesitant to really lock in on that as an idea because, like, in my mind, it made a lot of sense. But then I also thought, well, this isn't what we're actually gonna do. So why would we practice that? But then, oh, actually, no, this makes perfect sense. And in other areas of the game, you'll see that too, where a lot of hitting drills, you're moving your feet in different ways that you're not actually going to move your feet when you hit, different stances, doing, step over drill, kick throughs, exaggerated scissor drill, all that stuff. It's just to put your body in different positions and move through those positions. And even like, one of the things I noticed a lot this year working with the pitchers with the Dodgers is, their throwing program isn't just standard, okay, get out, do your throwing. A lot of them do shortstop throws where they'll practice fielding a ball, sidearm it, they'll do jump throws. And, I was talking to some of our pitching guys about it. It's all just about unlocking athleticism. Um, when we do delivery drills, you start in different positions, coil differently, do a step back, step through, all the stuff for the pitchers who obviously when you're pitching, you want the most repeatable mechanics possible, but you got to unlock your athleticism through that movement because even if you have a very standard pitching motion, you're still trying to rotate efficiently, generate power, be repeal, and be athletic. It's a sport. Everything's athletic. So just putting yourself in different positions to just go out be an athlete. I mean, you'll see college coaches all the time where during BP they'll have their catchers go down to third base and they'll just hit them ground balls and have them practice throwing like that. Like, yeah, a catcher doesn't have to feel the ground ball and throw it, but it's a good movement to do. It's good for you. Because also, you look at, you know, when you're trying to throw a runner out, you're not always going to get a pitch right down the middle. There's plenty of times where pitcher hears runner, they panic, they sail it, they'll spike it, and your feet aren't always going to be able to do the quick 1-2 that you do in drill work. Probably one of my favorite to watch with that is Patrick Bailey. I know, like, obviously being with the Dodgers, we're not supposed to like the Giants, but Patrick Bailey has so many highlight reels of making throws from crazy positions where his feet are doing something different every time. I was on our side, like, Will Smith is very good at that as well. Cal's gotten better at it. Probably one of the best ever was Buster Posey. And there's the term, I think, Jerry Weinstein coined it at CatcherCon like 2 years ago. The modern day catcher is a shortstop wearing gear. So we need to train like a shortstop wearing gear, not just the sit back there, catch, throw. Like, there's so many other elements we got to attack that can just help guys move better.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I like that you give those specific examples because, like, that's one thing that I think a lot of athletes can learn from, can grow from, or can really take advantage of, especially in our, social media age with so much access to videos, is, learning from the ones who do it exceptionally well. And I know I'm biased, like with Cal, I know he's not the best defensive catcher, like, even right now, like, but I know, like, just seeing some of his highlights, like I was at game 5 and I watched that. Did you see that play on game 5? The he got the
Yeah.
runner out. Like
Yeah.
that was just how fast it happened. Like that's more so just like what I think about. And I know there's like even cooler ones, but yeah, I think it's just really, really powerful. And so when we think of somebody like, Will Smith or Cal Raleigh, like what are some of the defensive things that players, even high school level, can study and learn from some of these guys, like even just if it's on video?
I mean, I would say there's a lot. Like, at the end of the day, if you're watching the best of the best, there's always some to pick up on. Now, Cal and Will are very unique examples because they both move a lot differently than a lot of catchers. Cal obviously way big body dude. He is able to do things that a lot of people aren't able to do. But the way that he is able to control his weight with how he late shifts, because he gets in his position later than most guys. Like, he'll be in his squat and the pitcher's almost at leg lift, and then he hops into it. Um, that's something that, let's say you're a catcher who likes that feel. Okay, watch how he does it. If you're someone who likes that aggressive punch through receiving move, watch how Cal does it. Both of them kind of do float loads where, they don't always go all the way to the ground. Watch what their glove positions are to allow them to not touch the ground but still stay below the ball, because that's like, kind of the main reason why we go to the ground now is the ground never changes. So if my gloves on the ground, I know I'm below the pitch. But you see more and more guys, like the Tigers are doing a lot, where guys will just kind of load below the zone. Um, and sometimes, like, I would have guys who would want to try that at the college level and in the youth level, but they would lose their sense of where their glove was. So, like one bad pitch is thrown, and then all of a sudden the glove loads here, and it's like, no, go back to where you are. So look at what they do to always be in that position. I'd say one thing with Will is watch his throwing. I mean, Will has been one of the best throwing catchers in baseball for years. And one thing that we highlight with him is his accuracy. He does not miss. And that's such a big part of throwing that I think is kind of overlooked, is how consistently are your throws on target. So look at how he repeats his mechanics. Will with his blocking, like he kind of floats his knee. A lot of times it's not even all the way on the ground. But look at how athletically he's able to pop out of that stance. He's also one of the few guys that will routinely throw out of a left knee down stance. Um, which I've had a lot of younger guys ask me, "Oh, can I catch?" Because left knee's generally more comfortable. "Oh, can I catch like that?" And I was like, "I don't know if you move that way." And they would highlight, "Oh, well, Will Smith does." It's like, well, Will's a freak. He's one of the highest paid catchers, if not the high. I forget if he might be the highest paid catcher. He's like one or two or three. He's up there for a reason, and yes, a big reason is because he hits 300 with lots of doubles. But okay, you want to try to do that? Watch how he does it. Because you never know what cues you're going to pick up. I mean, even this year, coaching the guys in the minor leagues, we'd have our standard drills that we stick to. When we wanted to attack something differently, me and our coordinators would put together a plan. Sometimes we'd go mad scientist mode. I'd be like, "Hey, I think if we do this sounds kind of crazy, but I think it will help." And a lot of times, my coordinator would be like, "Yeah, send me video. Let's see what that does." And sometimes we do like, I don't know about that. Sometimes like, "That was awesome. That's now part of your daily routine." But a lot of time, the game happens so fast that you don't feel what you're doing. So that's where we would use a lot of video. Because, I mean, in pro ball, you get to the field 5-6 hours before game time. So you got a lot of downtime. And I would show them other catchers. A lot of times, not even catchers in our organization. We had one guy who his glove was kind of slow and he was finishing really low with his glove. So I showed him a lot of video of William Contreras, because William Contreras is really good at just throwing the pocket through the ball, and he finishes relatively high with his glove. And so, being able to, even like, this is a professional baseball player we're talking about, who I think he was in like year 4 of playing professional baseball. He's still learning from just watching video of a major leaguer. I mean, I had all of them watch videos of Austin Wells when it came to receiving, because he's probably the best receiving catcher in baseball, and his move is very attainable with how he uses his gloves. So, um, even there, and looking at other guys, I mean, and also there's sometimes where it wasn't beneficial, where like one of my catchers was watching some video of Patrick Bailey, who is one of the better receivers in baseball, but he has a smaller glove move than what a lot of our guys do. So, when my guy came to me, he's talking, he's like, "Yeah, I was watching Patrick Bailey, seeing like how he does this, how he does that." And I was like, "Those keys are really good. However, let's look at how short he moves his glove versus how much you move your glove. You're a big mover. We want to keep you a big mover." And so then we just try to lock in on what elements of what Patrick Bailey does could this individual, lock in on, which was path and efficiency to the ball. But we're not going to try to watch Patrick Bailey and have him catch like Patrick Bailey, because they're different athletes, they're different builds. But yeah, I'd say just, and a big thing is when you look at the best catchers, look at what they all have in common. Because, everyone in every movement of baseball, everyone does something slightly different, right? Like, if there was one way to hit, we would all do it. If there was one way to pitch, everyone would do it. One way, everyone would do it. But so even when there is this big spectrum of how the movements work, there are always a couple commonalities between all of them. So if you start to pick up on, okay, these guys all catch completely different, they're all elite, but they all do A, B, and C. Okay, maybe A, B, and C is a big key. Versus, okay, X, Y, and Z is different. Well, then lock in on which one of those different movements might, translate better to your game.
I like that. I mean, and that's huge. Like finding somebody that's, I hear it in football too. It's like, okay, you don't just watch any defensive lineman. You follow a defensive lineman that actually is similar to who you are, how you're built, how you move, like those types of things. I want to hit on hitters, because of, again, the experience of a catcher, the experience of a bullpen catcher and everything, and just being in the organizations you've been a part of. What is key for hitters when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to, like, yeah, just in general, some of those things that you see that the younger athletes really need to understand.
I mean, I would say the hitting, there's probably even a bigger spectrum than catching, but locking in on how you move. We had like at Everett Community College, we had our hitting coach is a guy named Eli Konsker. He's now the head coach. Um, Elite hitting mind. He got his coaching start with the Rangers, and a lot of it was like what type of mover were they. And a lot of like what I would teach hitting wise, and he would teach hitting wise a little bit more shifted towards forward movers, staying linear versus rotational. But not everyone is a forward mover. Um, so let's say you're someone that has been taught to move forward, have a big stride essentially, and then kind of let the backside scissor kick through and just stay through the baseball with everything versus kind of fighting rotation. And then you find yourself being late, you find yourself being off balance. Well, maybe the big forward move isn't for you. You know there are guys like, you know let's say you're trying to generate power. Well, yes, we want to generate power, but how can you lock your swing into generating power without sacrificing consistency? Because that's where we'll see a lot of kids with like hitting technique that I've never taught, but like HLP, the snap and tilt, like I was like, okay, really gonna coil, 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 explode. Okay, there are some guys who do. Obviously, we see Aaron Judge, we see Kerry Carpenter, but um, if you're a mover, does that make sense for you? Um, with your general how you rotate, how your body moves. Just locking in on what is the most consistent and how can you stay on time. Because that's obviously the biggest thing, in my opinion, with hitting is you can have the best swing in the world, but if you're not on time, it doesn't matter. Um, and are you a fast twitch guy or a little bit more of a slow twitch guy? Um, there's different ways to get into a powerful position, and you know, just like catching and pitching, fielding, where everyone will kind of start a little bit differently, but then at foot strike, it's almost like, oh, you're always kind of in that same position where you look at like there's that graphic that it goes around Twitter every year of hitters like all the way from Babe Ruth to Mike Trout at foot strike, and they're all almost in the exact same position. It's like, okay, how can I get there as efficient as possible in a way that is repeatable for me and I'm still generating power? And also understand what type of hitter are you? Are you a power hitter or are you kind of a slappy guy? Like we had one of our hitters this year with the Loons, Kendall George. I believe he's technically the fastest player in minor league baseball. I mean, he's the fastest player I've ever seen. The amount he finished with 101 stolen bases this year, and he ended up breaking D Gordon's record for us. And skinny guy. He early in the year he did hit a couple homers. He did take Chase Burns deep dead center when we faced him, but all of a sudden he started kind of like a little bit more Ichiro style slapping the ball, and his batting average went from like 063 to he finished high 200s. And it's like, okay, he's wicked fast, so he can get away with chopping the ball to third base, and he gets on base. Now, when I was talking with our hitting coach about that, so yes, for this year, that's a big success. He's just getting barreled. Now, next season, we need to get more consistency to drive the ball, not necessarily to hit home runs, but get the ball in the gap and run a little bit more. Like when I was playing, coming up like high school, I was a power-ish hitter. I hit a lot of doubles, hit a couple homers because it's high school baseball. If you end up going on play college, you should be able to do some damage. Got to college, and my junior college coach my freshman year was roasting me all fall that I was going to lead the country in flaps of the warning track because I just wasn't getting the consistent barrel I got in high school because pitchers were better. And he was talking, he's like, you're a 6 foot, 180-pound catcher. Hit the ball up the middle. And so I completely changed my swing to just try to make contact up the middle, and you know, ended up having higher batting averages, not a ton of damage, but it worked for me because that was my role. I would, I, I wasn't the guy who was going to hit home runs. So, understanding what type of hitter you're going to be and then locking in on the aspects that, maximize that. And obviously we want, ideally, you're the well-rounded 2-hole, 3-hole guy that hits for power and for average, but obviously that's not everybody.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. Yeah, and I mean that's cool that you highlighting that can change. I think that's important because a lot of guys might put themselves into a certain box, and it's like, well, no, like you could evolve into a power guy or into more of just a hitting for average kind of guy. So I like that, especially when I look at somebody like Josh Naylor, who like looks like he would be a dude that would just like crank home runs, but he's an average guy, and I'm like, oh, okay, and he's first baseman, stealing bases and stuff. I'm just like, you don't look like, you don't have to fit the mold either. So I like that.
Right.
What about pitchers? So yeah, what would be some big things that you have seen, especially because you're in an organization with, I will say, the second best pitching in the league. I will say number two to the Mariners, but having guys like Otani and some of those guys, in the organization, like what are some of those big things that, again, the younger athletes can really learn from and develop while they are coming up in their teens?
Um, I mean, that's a tougher one to answer because our philosophy is slightly different. Where, as an organization, generally our philosophy is throw baseball hard. We are the highest velo organization from top to bottom. We also do lead the world in walks every year. And that's where, we have a lot of guys that we train to throw hard, and then we kind of reverse engineer to, okay, now you throw 100. How can you put it in the box? And I would say like the biggest, I would say that's the biggest separation of the levels is, everyone nowadays, everyone throws hard. But, because during spring training, the bullpen catchers, we go to the major league side for the first half of the day, come back to the minor league side. The stuff that I was catching on the minor league side was not less than what I was catching on the major league side. I would catch guys on the minor league side that threw harder than Snell, harder than Otani. That their sweeper looked like Dustin Mays. The difference with the major league guys was they didn't miss. Um, like when I would go to the major league side and if I was catching flat grounds, so just not just kind of on the side, I wouldn't even put a mask on. I would just have my shin guards on, and I knew that they were going to hit their spots. There were some times where Alex Vesio would literally tell me, he's like, I'm going to spike a slider, and I'm not wearing gear. I'm just looking, I'm like, okay, here we go. But I'll go on the minor league side, and yeah, even if it's low intent, you gear up. I forgot I didn't gear up one day while catching delivery drills, which is supposed to be like really low intent, and one of our guys who ended up being our closer in Great Lakes this year spiked a splitter, and I blocked it with no gear on. And let's just say that was the last day I didn't wear gear on the minor league sides. So how that can relate to younger pitchers is a lot of development they're going to have is definitely going to be geared towards stuff. How hard can you throw? How much spin can you generate? How much vert can you generate? But if you really want to separate yourself, don't forget the control aspect, because there are guys all throughout the minor leagues who throw 100 and they're going to be in A ball for a while. What's going to get them to the big leagues is throwing 100 in the strike zone. And it's like college level, I would say throw strikes. Like have good stuff, but throw strikes. When I was coaching at Everett, we joked that every year, we'd have some decent, 90 arms guys throwing hard. Like every year we'd have like one or two 90 arms that just didn't pitch for us, didn't really do anything because they couldn't throw strikes. And then we'd have two kids who threw 78 to 80 that just carved up the NWAC because they had good stuff and, could put it wherever they wanted. Now those kids from 78 to 80, could they move up to Division One? Probably not. But they could be successful at, the junior college level, then maybe NAI D2, D3. And then same thing in professional baseball. Like you'll see a lot of kids who are great in college throwing 88. It's really hard to get drafted throwing 88. But if you're throwing 100 miles an hour with no clue of where it's going, it's going to be difficult to get picked up. So you got to find that if you want to be the best of the best, have wicked stuff, put it where you want it. And then have consistent pitch movement. That's another big one is, having really good feel for your pitches. So, like, okay, my fastball rides. This is what it's going to do versus sometimes, we'd have guys that, so, okay, that had 20 vert. That one had 10 vert and then 19 horizontal. Okay, those are two completely different pitches. That's nasty if you're doing that on purpose. But when we're trying to control an at bat and you don't know which way your fastball is going to move, that's a problem. So, yeah, I would say, throw hard, but learn what your stuff is doing and pitch to your strengths.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Uh, Lastly, I like to always end with a more open-ended question because I may have an angle of where I take the podcast, but then there's also or where I start. But I always like to give space for the guest, and so I'm going to start calling this the Clutch Three. But what are three essential things that any up and coming baseball player really needs to understand, like fundamentals or anything specific?
Well, I would say number one, love the game, love the work. Baseball is a sport of mass reps. You have to fully enjoy the amount of repetition that you need to take to become great. If you don't love the work, then and you just play for the reward of the game, you're gonna run out of time. So it's cliche, but embrace the grind. There's always every day there's always something to do to get better. There's always some way that you can separate yourself, and it's like think, okay, if I'm competing with 200 people for a scholarship, what are they doing that I'm not doing? So be a baseball cage rat, be a field rat, just have nothing, every day find something to do. Number two, I would say, obviously weight room, just turn yourself into a good athlete overall. I know like nowadays it's kind of the thing where people want to specialize. Personally, I think what made me a good enough athlete to, play at the collegiate level and never have to pay for my school was my time playing football. Um, you know, Going out and just learning the grind of football, and how that taught me weight room, how that taught me speed training, toughness, the all that stuff. I think it just made me a more well-rounded athlete. A lot of guys I played with in college who were better, they played other sports. You know, so I would say unless you are someone who baseball is just the only sport that you love to play, play other sports. Be a well-rounded athlete, live in the weight room. Now at the same time, don't overdo it, especially when you're younger. When you're 12 years old, you don't need to be deadlifting every other day, but take care of your body. Obviously, nutrition is probably like the biggest struggle for a lot of guys. But other than that, become a student of the game. You know, try to. We are in this age of information where you can go on Twitter, Instagram, wherever, and find countless videos and countless posts and articles of people talking about every aspect of probably every sport, and especially baseball in particular. And just learn that stuff, and also through that process learn what things to actually lock in on and learn what things to kind of avoid, because with any situation where there's mass information, there is the issue of bad information. There's definitely a lot of bad information out there. I do think there is a lot of really good information out there, so kind of locking in on you know what coaches are you going to follow, what maybe you like following a certain school that they post good stuff. Just learn the game. There's so many aspects of this game that you're learning every day. I mean, even that, like, I mean, I've been coaching for 7 years now at the either college or professional level, and even when I was playing, I was coaching high school summer ball. Every year I look at things differently. Like there's a lot of stuff where I'll think like, oh, 5 years ago I thought I knew what I was doing, and like, we were doing a lot of good things 5 years ago. But then I look at it through the context of everything I know now. It's like, wow, there's always something to learn. And that was honestly probably one of the most fun things about spring training for me, is obviously being in an organization like the Dodgers. There are just baseball minds everywhere. But whether it's like randomly talking to Charlie Huff, who's one of the greatest knuckleballers ever, about what it was like pitching with Nolan Ryan, or hearing Nelson Cruz talk about hitting, because he's one of our hitting guys, Placido Polanco talk about stuff, um, and then even just all the minds that we had there, and just the giant think tank. It's like, wow, this information's awesome. I wish I knew half this stuff a long time ago, and I'm sure next year, like, it'll be the same, where we all spend another year watching this game, learning from this game, and then we get new ideas. And, I think as young players, try to be the smartest baseball player. And that'll also definitely, for guys who go on and play college baseball, that'll make their coaches' lives a lot easier. Um, we had times at Everett where we had to do baseball 101, and those were not always the most fun days. But I'd say those big three things: embrace the grind, love it, do it every day. Weight room, take care of your body, study, enjoy watching the game, like whatever way, if it's video, if it's reading, any way that you process information to learn more about it, do it. Why not? If this is something that you really want to do and make baseball part of your life, and you can become a baseball lifer even if you don't play in the major leagues. I mean, I didn't even play Division I baseball, and I have, every job I've had has been in baseball, and it's amazing. I wouldn't trade this for anything. And you know, if you want to become a baseball lifer, you can start the process now, and just there's so much stuff out there, and it's a great life. So, yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. Like, and I love the range of what you hit on there. I think all the athletes can really take from that, and just that love for the game too, especially when you talk about the social media age and just the access to information. Because it's like there's tons of people posting, like we were talking about offline, like on Twitter and stuff, that you can learn from. Like I mean, even freaking A-Rod, us Mariners fans are kind of iffy on A-Rod, but like he posts a lot of really good hitting and fielding stuff right now, and that's easy stuff that you can go and study. So I think, yeah, I love that you emphasize that being the student of the game too.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just there's there's so many ways to look at this game, and also just especially with the look, like I get to reemphasize loving it. If your goal is to make it up to higher levels, you really gotta love it. I mean, if you go play college baseball, I'm sure there's some big time Division Ones where it's a little bit more glamorous. You got the NIL, you got crazy resources, but even for guys, most guys, especially in the Pacific Northwest, you're going junior college. And I was like Everett, we had a lot of nice things for junior college, but it's still a junior college grind. You're up at 6 a.m. for lifts. You're grinding out months at the field without actually playing games and fall ball. Then weather gets bad, we're indoors. And then even once you get to the season, it's practice, Tuesday through Friday, game Saturday, Sunday. And then summer hits, you go play summer ball. And, obviously a lot of high school kids, young kids, are playing summer ball. Well, a lot of your friends are probably out on the boat doing other stuff, like, just living normal life. If you don't love it, that stuff is going to, you know, get to you. And if you let that stuff get, you're not going to maximize. Even in the minor leagues, I mean, the minor leagues is a grind. Like we are, when we were like game 120, we're all sitting down in the bullpen, like, yeah, we really we really here, and like it's like, yep, if you don't love it, you're not going to make it. And there's always someone who does love it who wants to take your spot. So, you know, understanding that your development's going to be hindered unless you really make everything about this, because eventually it's a lifestyle. It's not just a sport. And now that being said, if there's youth guys who are just playing this to be a sport and have fun, that's awesome. Do that. But that try to see what category you're in. Are you someone who wants to turn this into your life, or are you someone who's just I love baseball, I like to play it, and then once I'm done, I'm gonna enjoy watching Major League Baseball games. That's perfectly fine too. But there's different elements to it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Coach, I really appreciate you hopping on, and there was just so much info. This was a longer podcast than I typically do, but it's because there's just so many different elements that I think the listeners can gravitate towards. And it's like, okay, catchers, listen to this section, hitters, listen to this, like all the different things. And so, yeah, really appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And listeners, I mean, you guys got plenty of stuff that you can work off of from this podcast, save some clips, whatever. And make sure you share this with your teammates. Like make sure you share it with other catchers, other hitters, guys who really need to hear this stuff to help them level up their game. And as always, as we always say, keep striving for greatness.